some bright, shiny faces, and I know that the last, couple weeks, maybe a month or two, has been difficult for some people, depending on the situation, whether it's health, whether it's storm-related, whether it's job-related, all those things. Just know that we're always praying for our people and all the things that affect them, big or small, because it's all a part of just who we are, and the things that happen in our lives color our mindset sometimes, and we're just praying that those things aren't stumbling blocks in your relationship with God, but are opportunities to rise above the challenge and place your faith, continuing faith in Jesus as things are happening. You know, the toughest place to have faith is actually in those trials. It's easy to say we have faith when the going is good, right? Like, oh yeah, I've got faith, and then something bad happens. And we're like, oh man, I don't know, man, I don't know. But that faith is tested in those moments. And so just know that we're praying for everybody when we know that something is going on. And so good to see the Fisher family this morning. I don't like to call people out, but I think everything I just said kind of embodies their season of life, and they're just a picture of faith. I don't know, they might be punching walls and yelling and screaming at home, but if you know them, you know that they've got just this faith in Christ that cannot be shaken, and I think the enemy has probably tried to shake them a little bit in this season, and we are just continuing to pray that you guys would stand strong and the enemy would take his garbage someplace else. So anyway, it's good to see you all today. And I love hanging out with awesome people. I love coming to church and getting to see all you guys, because the people really do make up the church. I don't know if you've been to churches where you didn't feel like the people you were going to church with were your people, but I think we're blessed. It's one of the signs of a good church, I think, is when you look forward to going to church. Not just because of the people that you're going to see there, because obviously we want to have an encounter with Jesus, but it's so much more amazing when we have family to do that with. And you just, because there's some times where you're going through something and you aren't even really feeling like going, but you drag yourself out of bed anyway, and you just know that you get to see your people there and you get to have an encounter with Jesus, and you just know that you and I can come to church a hot mess, and we don't have to pretend everything is fine. We can be awkward and weird, and the greatest part is we get to be weird and awkward and hot messes together, and nobody's throwing any shade, no judgment there, and it's all okay. I've been to some churches, and maybe you have too, that hasn't been okay, and you didn't feel that way, that you could be not okay. But I hope that LifePoint is that place for you, that we've built that here in our culture, that you love seeing your church family, and I hope that you love seeing your church family as much as I love seeing all of you. So if you missed last Sunday, you missed a great one. We celebrated some of the great things that God has done in this church in the last year. God has done great things in this church from the existence of this church, 72, 73 years of the history of this church. But we got to celebrate a little bit of what happened last year. And we got to cast vision for what I believe is going to be happening in our church this year. I wish we could recap it all. If it's definitely worth talking about more than once, and so we will. So if you missed out last week, or you need a reminder, go on the interwebs, check out last week's live stream on Facebook and YouTube. The fact that words were spoken and they're immortalized on the internet kind of scare me a little bit sometimes, because some of it is I'm weird sometimes, and I can't talk straight sometimes, and things come out in an awkward way. True story. Last week that happened probably at least twice, but mostly because there's this element of vulnerability when it comes to speaking out what I think God is saying about this church, and knowing that the receipts are out there, that there's proof of what I said, and I have no other choice to believe that if God spoke it, then he's going to do it. And so hopefully, as we see things happening in this church over this next year, we can remember the moment when God spoke that over our church, and then you all will realize that I'm not crazy. Maybe that ship has sailed already, I don't know. But I do know that God has been moving and stirring in the hearts of people in this church, that it's not just me or a select few people, and I'm glad for that. I'm glad that people are passionate about Jesus, and things are welling up inside of you. Some of you may not even know what those are, but you're feeling this pull, feeling this call, and it needs to be explored more. But man, I had some good conversations this last week after service, and other people have said, hey, we should talk. And so I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see how God is moving in you, how he is prompting you to get out of your comfort zone. I think if I had a theme for a year, I think it's been our theme this last year and will continue to be, get out of your comfort zone and just be a vital part of what God has in store for us and what he's doing here. Because it takes all of us, right? And again, if you weren't here last week, man, like I say it all the time, hey, go online, check out last week's sermon. And it's not for me. I don't want you to hear my voice again and again and again. I actually hate hearing myself talk back. And so when I listen, I'm cringing like, ugh. So when I say you should go check it out, it's usually because I think there's content there that will be applicable to you. And if there's anything that's more applicable right now than anything else is knowing what we're doing as a church and where we're going, and so you don't miss the wave, so to speak. So you know how you can get involved and aren't caught off guard when things happen. So we need you, and we're just better together in the kingdom. So, man, a handful of weeks ago we talked about building foundations, and last week went hand in hand with that, anticipating what was going to be built on that foundation. And that kind of brings us to where we are this morning. Today we get to start a new series. I love series. 3 years ago, about a dozen of us sat down in the fellowship hall over some dinner, and we really talked about what we valued as a church. We talked about our church and like what it was and what we valued, what it could be. And so this might raise a question in you in terms of values. You might ask, shouldn't all churches have the same values? And maybe on a basic level, that answer is yes. There's some basic things that a church should value. But churches that are very intentional in identifying areas that they place the highest value on and execute them well generally become effective churches. Notice I said effective. I didn't say big churches. Effective churches. Like, I want to be an effective church. I want LifePoint to be very good at what God is calling it to do. I'd rather have an effective church of like 50, 60 people than an ineffective church of like 200. Like, I'm just telling you, I'm not worried about the numbers. Because I think if we're doing something right, we will grow bigger numerically, and we have, but it's not about sheer numbers, but it's simply about being obedient to excel at the things that we are called to do. So this morning we're starting a series called Values. This morning we're going to set the table for that series by talking about our mission statement. Think of the mission statement as a description of what we're going to do, and then in the coming weeks we're going to talk about the values which will give us an idea of how we are going about that. So this morning we're going to talk about the what. So here's LifePoint Community Church's mission statement. We're going to put it up on the screen, I think. Sweet, you got it. And I'm going to read it. Our mission is to encourage and lead families and the community to pursue an authentic relationship with Jesus. Will you read that all out loud with me? Ready, go. Our mission is to encourage and lead families and the community to pursue an authentic relationship with Jesus. Sweet, you all said it, and now you're committed to it. No fingers crossed, no take-backs. If you've been to our sister church, Waypoint, this might seem awfully familiar. Why try to reinvent the wheel when it's a great wheel? I'm not a wordsmith, and that is a solid mission right there and perfectly describes us as a church. And so there you have it. I have no shame that we borrowed that from them. I love being partners in ministry. So you don't have to be here very long to know that this statement is the heartbeat of our church. And I hope that we have executed that well and shown that well. This This mission is a direct response to our call to the Great Commission found in Matthew chapter 28 in verse 19, when Jesus told his disciples then and is telling us now today as we read it, and we're going to see this up on the screen. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. If we were to break that down into some simpler terms on a very simplistic level, in some ways Jesus is saying, hey, go and tell the world about me and teach them how to live and bring them into the family of God. Now, it goes deeper than that for sure. There's some deep theological things in there, but on a very basic level, that's the message. Bringing lost people, broken people, hurt people, messed up people, people that have been branded as outcasts, bringing them into God's family. I love family. I love big family. I come from a bigger family, and for me, the philosophy is the more the merrier. And so I love that we have a big family here, and there's always room for more. Always room for more. That might be a difficult concept for some if your idea and history of a biological family is broken and hasn't portrayed this, but I am so thankful that you and I can come together as the family of God. And just so you know, you are among family here at LifePoint. We're all descendants from the first family. We're going to talk a little bit about families this morning because it's part of our mission statement, so that's where I'm going with that. We're descendants from the first family, from Adam and Eve. That's pretty cool if you think about it. Raises some questions when you think about how that family tree looks from the beginning, but if you ignore that, that's pretty cool. But it also means that we all come from a broken family, if you think about it that way. Adam and Eve created the first broken family. God put them on this earth, and then they had a really good thing, and they made a really bad decision and messed something up, and every single descendant from them has been paying for it ever since. Talk about generational struggles. Family is important. The family unit is important. But now we're living in a chaotic culture where meaning and purpose of family has been redefined by some people. In Genesis chapter 1, God establishes the family and establishes his authority over it by virtue of creating it. God made it and is in charge of establishing his design and his intent for it. So we're going to see that in verses 26 through 28 of Genesis chapter 1. And this is what it says. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. I'd love to preach just on that section sometime. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. God created this. No question where we come from or who is responsible for us being here. God created this concept of family, male and female, that are to come together under God to be fruitful and to multiply, creating offspring to inhabit the earth. Getting married and having kids is not this outdated societal construct that some might say it is, but it's an institution created by God. Now, if you choose not to have kids, I don't think God has a problem with that. He was just telling Adam and Eve that if they didn't have kids, they were going to be very, very lonely for the rest of their lives. They'd probably be just sitting around singing just the two of us. I almost sang it, but then I decided not to. God is the creator of family. And therefore, God is the standard by which family is to be defined. We were created in his image, and we were created to be more like him as much as humanly possible. You and I fall short of that standard, but we're supposed to be like him as much as humanly possible, not just individually, but collectively as a family. So family is not just a physical idea or a physical body. The fact that we are created to be in perfect union with God also means that families they're also supposed to be spiritual bodies, spiritual entities. We may be in society, but we are not defined by society. We weren't created by them, and we're not defined by them. So our family problems, our life problems, our world's problems cannot be fixed by society standards now, can they? They'll try, but our problems can't be fixed by the world. In verse 26, God gave dominion or rulership over the earth. He gave people that were in perfect relationship with him the opportunity to be leaders, to set the example for others to come. And it was only when Adam and Eve experienced that break in their perfect relationship with God that sent the world into sin and darkness. And we can see that sin and darkness so prevalently in the world around us. We see it on the news. We see it at work. We see it up and down the street when we're out and about. We see it in our neighborhoods. Obviously, our country has earthly leadership that is made from human beings, and many of those human beings don't know God, and so it's no wonder why things are so messed up, because they're not seeking the heart of God. And the results in our country of the division and chaos that we see today, that all stems from people not knowing God and his intent for mankind and his intent for families and humanhood. And this is an election year, and we're going to see that amplified. So you and I need to be centered on Christ through it all, and that's all I'm going to say about that. In verse 28, God tells Adam and Eve to increase in number, to be fruitful and multiply. He wasn't telling them to have kids and so that Adam and Eve could just look at cute little babies, which is awesome, and think that their little boy or little girl looks just like them. This one looks like mom, this one looks like dad. This one might be the milkman's because it doesn't look like either one of us. But instead, God's purpose for those children were for the same purpose that he had created Adam and Eve when he created them in his image. Adam and Eve were created to look like God. Their children were also supposed to be a reflection of God. And as much as we inherit certain looks or traits from our parents, for better or worse, darn my hairline, ultimately, we are created to be a reflection of Jesus to those that we encounter each and every day. And unless you live underneath a rock, you do encounter people almost every single day. We are meant to be in relationship with people, and every single person that we encounter needs more Jesus, right? If they don't know Jesus, they need Jesus. If they do know Jesus, they need more Jesus. We need more Jesus. And God created his children to make the family of God bigger and healthier. So in Genesis chapter 3, every person on the earth at that time, all two of them, every person on the earth before the forbidden fruit was eaten, led to what we refer to as the fall, the fall of mankind. Before that, every person was in a perfect relationship with God and each other. Just think of how amazing that would be if all of us were in perfect relationship with God and perfect relationship with each other. How amazing would that be? There was a short time on earth where that was the case, and it is no longer. Thanks for ruining that, Adam and Eve. On a side note, men, women are going to shoot me, I don't care. You know when you ask a woman where they want to eat or what they want to eat, why it takes them so long to decide? Y'all know where I'm going with this. It's a big decision, and because the very first time that this question was asked, it happened in the Garden of Eden. All of humanity was plunged into eternal sin and death, and we've been paying for it ever since. One of the men warned me not to do it, but I just ran right through that stop sign. All right. But think about what happened to families after that moment. In Genesis chapter 4, we see family turning upon family. We see the family unit being broken. Adam and Eve's children suffer from the sins of their parents. Like Cain killed Abel. That wasn't happening before. Family dynamics matter. Godly input in our lives is so crucial. When there's sin and darkness in our parents, chances are that there's going to be sin and darkness in the children. And the only thing that can break that cycle would be to turn or to return people to God. Healthy people and healthy families are more likely to reproduce healthy people and healthy families. And those that aren't healthy tend to reproduce that unhealthiness and dysfunction. We're more likely to reproduce what we know, which makes it utterly crucial to know what God's intent is for his children and his family. We're not just randomly here as children. We're not just randomly here as family. There's an intent for us in our own lives and in our own families. And if you and I know what that intent is and how to reproduce it, it's part of our call to carry out the mission of bringing people in our city closer to Jesus with that example. My parents came to faith when I was 3. Neither my mom or dad had a life of faith modeled to them in their younger years. I'm thankful for a few brave men that witnessed to my dad at work. These days, like people get all bent out of shape. Somebody was trying to talk to me about religion at work today. Get out of here. I'm calling HR. But I remember my dad being talked to about Jesus by friends of his and the transformation that happened in his life. And over the years, my parents grew in their faith, and how they handled the storms of life spoke volumes to many others in our family. And there's a very large portion of our family that is following Jesus today on my dad's side of the family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. There were people delivered from addiction, and there had to be some awesome miracles that occurred to make that happen. People were transformed by the power of Jesus that was running through our family. There's been amazing things in our family, but I still have family members that need to be reached for Jesus. So we're praying for that, and we're believing for spiritual wholeness in our family, and I'm praying the same for you. It's only because of my parents' example to me and their dedication to God, and by God's mercy and grace that I'm able to stand here today as someone who loves Jesus, and I'm blessed to be a part of a family that has been forever changed because of Jesus. And I'm blessed to be a part of God's family here at LifePoint. Even if your biological family isn't serving Christ, you have spiritual family here, and that is so important. We don't always recognize that importance. Families are important. Communities are important. Families and communities of people that are living out what they were created for can have an exponential impact on our world today. And that's our job, your and I's job. The church, a community of believers, plays a vital role in maintaining the Christian family. A family that has God at the center and gathers with other godly people and families are drawn closer to the things of God, the things that he has for each and every one of us, and then collectively as a global church. The reason that we have so many broken families is they're not making a commitment to be intentional and invest in their families under the covering of God. God created families. And without getting into any arguments this morning, I'll just say this. There are people today that want to break down the family, redefine the family, and have the leaders of our country be the ones that we bow down to and serve and lean upon for strength, understanding, and provision, when in fact we have a heavenly Father that gets to dictate those terms, that we are blessed to submit ourselves to. And we get to lean upon him for strength and understanding and provision. And yep. He's the one that created families, defines families, and he is the only one who holds our families together. I desire for our culture to be family friendly, but not at the expense of having families dictated by culture. Families matter, not just biological families. I can't stress that enough. But people that have come together through all sorts of situations and circumstances that have created a relationship or a bond that becomes like family. You can call your neighbor's family. If you work, you might have a work family. Your community can be your family. The Christian family, in whatever form that you find it in, has a powerful impact on society. It starts with your personal walk with God, and it progresses to your relationship with your family in whatever form that is, and to your connection and involvement with the church. When we're all moving forward in the direction that God has called us to go in, we can make an incredible difference. Man, there's no government program, no check that we can write that's big enough that can fix what is broken in our world today. Those things can be great tools, don't get me wrong. But without the presence of God in the center of people's personal lives and families, the darkness that has overcome the world will only get darker. But the great news is that you and I have been called to be a light to the world. Sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect. We can talk a good game and, I want to be a light to the world. I'm going to make a difference. Sometimes I think we go about it the wrong way. We want to tell people about Jesus, but some people are just hoping to make it through the day. We want to tell people about Jesus, but some people are just worried about feeding their children that day. We want to tell people about Jesus, how he is our shelter in the storm, but like some of these people, and in this area is pretty prevalent, some people are just hoping to find shelter for the night. You and I might have issues that we're worried about and problems in our lives and very real problems, but at the end of the day, most of us have a roof over our head and some food on the table and can settle down someplace with a safe place to rest. But in the reality, not everybody has those things. When we're home, like in the evening, watching TV or just hanging out, there are families that are in a state of broken confusion and things aren't going well. And sometimes their homes even resemble kind of like a war zone. There are kids that can't sleep at night because they hear their parents fighting and are wondering if they're going to split up, or maybe these kids suffer abuse and they never feel safe. Things that you and I take for granted most often are some of the very things that dominate the priority list for people that are trying to make it through the day. We want to share Jesus with these people and these families, but how can we do it in a way that they might receive it? I've heard it said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Now, I've heard that said a lot, and it gets thrown around a lot, but in my experience, that's been true. What I'm hitting at here in all of this is that we can offer people the information of Jesus, but if we don't address some of their practical needs out of the love of Jesus from the overflow of our hearts and our healthy relationship with him, we might not get their attention. If we don't acknowledge their earthly need, they may not be open to having their spiritual need met. The church isn't purely a social service, but that is one of the tools in our belt. And as a church, we invest into the community. We want to find practical ways to do that. And we're going to do some more of that this year. If we're meeting needs through giving Thanksgiving food boxes or giveaways or whatever else we do, we gain influence in people's lives when we meet those needs. And in turn, maybe we get the opportunity to invest into their lives and their families and help them in living a right life with a relationship with Jesus. We desire to make eternal investments. Investing in things is important. When we invest in something, we show that it has a great value or a significance. And at LifePoint, we want to invest in families and in community. I don't want to just talk about investing. I want to invest. I want to take action. When you invest in something that has significance, when you purchase something that is valuable, you want to know that if it breaks, that it's got a warranty, right? Like when I buy something I hate, like purchasing the warranty, like if it's optional, I'm like, no, I'm good. Just like I'm hoping this works for what I need it for. But buying something that comes with a warranty is reassuring. That someone is willing to fix the valuable thing that's broken. Guess what? Family is God's product. He's the only one that can warranty that. Many people have families that are broken but want someone else to take responsibility for fixing what is broken. This isn't like one of those pesky telemarketers that call up and said, I'm trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. I mean, they can technically honor the warranty outside of the manufacturer on your car, but God is the inventor and manufacturer of families, and He is the only one that can and who is faithful to stand behind the warranty if we only take that brokenness to Him and allow Him to fix it. We might do a good job of taking our lives to God and having Him help fix us, but how are we doing at letting other people know where they can go to get the warranty work done in their family? We have a God-given responsibility to let people in our world know who the manufacturer of families is and model to them how to operate those families according to the instructions that the manufacturer provides. It's amazing what kind of instructions and warnings come with things today. You've seen some crazy warning labels, I'm sure. I've seen children's clothes that have a label that says, remove child before washing. I'm surprised that there needs to be a label for that. Another label is from an iron, and it says, do not iron clothes while on body. I guess warning labels are necessary because people have done the things that they tell you not to do. Somebody tried to do it. This was on a bottle of dog medication. May cause drowsiness. Use care when operating a car. I personally have never had a dog that drives, so I don't know what they're talking about there. And there's a warning label on a letter opener. Safety goggles recommended. Like, how violently are you opening your letters? There's one warning label that someone might actually appreciate. It's not a how-to, but it is a warning. It's found on a particular brand of hot sauce. It says, Dave's Insanity Hot Sauce also strips waxed floors and removes driveway grease stains. Good to know. I'm sure that'll also cause some pretty nasty intestinal distress. Let's just leave it that way. Now, I don't know if that warning is true or not, but sometimes you just need to know what a product is capable of beyond its actual intended use. I say all of that to say that products come with instructions and warnings, and even if it sometimes is pretty obvious to you and I that we should not use those things in that way, sometimes even if it seems to us how to live a God-honoring life and how to build successful families, we live in a world that need these simple reminders that you and I think are very basic or even unnecessary. But people need to be reminded of some of the basic building blocks for human relationships. So just as people need to be reminded that we should not use the hairdryer in the bathtub or while we're sleeping, or that wearing a Superman cape doesn't actually enable you to fly, also very real warning labels. Just like people need to be reminded about some of these very basic things that can end badly if not done properly, We live in a world where people need to read some of the warning labels that we might find very obvious. Warning, infidelity causes broken families. Warning, living by the standards of the world will leave you broken and empty and lonely. Warning, living by the standards of the world and living a life without Jesus at the center is no life at all. Those warnings might be very obvious to you and I. But to a broken world, these words of instruction are necessary. So who will be the carrier of that message? And when those godly warnings are disregarded and the instructions have been thrown away, because face it, some of us don't read that stuff until afterwards, and then we realize, oh, there was a reason why we should have read the instructions. After those have been thrown away and our lives messed up, who will direct those people who are hurting in our community back to the very one who gave us life and free access to a relationship with him? Who's going to do that? It's part of our mission here at our church. In Romans chapter 10, verses 14 and 15, the Apostle Paul writes, "How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? How can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news." When we are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus, picture it in that scenario, in that verse. We are called to be the ones that bring good news to broken people. We get to literally walk out and do those things. People that grow up in broken homes with broken relationships are likely to find other broken relationships along the way because they haven't been shown the healthy way, so they can't imitate that in their own lives. And so we get to be the bearers of the good news, to get to set the example. And the weight of that is heavy when you think about it, that our mission to encourage and lead families and the community to pursue an authentic relationship with Jesus can be the difference between the different paths that someone's life can take. Sometimes it's one piece of news that can make or break your life. Think of the children across the street at Malabon Elementary School. I'm glad we have a little bit of influence over there. Think about the other schools that we have, like just a 10-minute radius from our church. We've got a lot of kids, a lot of young people represented in our community. Like, I don't know how many of these kids know Jesus. I know some of them do, but I bet you more of them don't. And I bet you they come from homes that struggle in any number of ways. And if we were to have more influence on these kids in some way or another, that might be the difference in the outcome of their life. If it can make a difference in the life that they have, the person they become, the decisions they make, the kind of family that they produce, and ultimately the outcome of their eternal destination. What does that mean for us in practicality? Well, you and I are being called into action, and as I spoke about last week, this church is our church. It belongs to all of us, and the responsibility to advance the mission of the church lies on all of our shoulders. And if you're kind of unclear, if you're like, what is he talking about? Go back to last week. Listen to it for the first time, listen to it for the second or the third time until you really understand where we're headed. The mission of the church is not a spectator sport. We need all hands on deck. Young people, old people, everything in between, willing to be equipped and released to lead ministries, to facilitate gatherings, to administrate, to use your talent or your passion to fill a need, to serve, to pray, to encourage, or any number of things that support the church, the people in it, and ultimately its directive to reach people outside of the doors of the church for Jesus. I'm just praying that as God continues to open doors for us and present opportunities to us, that we will see people rising from within us to say, yes, God, use me. Whatever comes our way, whatever opportunities arise, there's going to be a lot of them. Possibilities are endless if we are seeking after the will of God. And I hope you guys, like, I get excited. I know some of you get excited. Some of you, I can't read your face. I don't know what's going on in you. Some of you are deep, introspective and could be excited, but you got a scowl on your face because you're processing. Like, I don't know. I hope you all are excited to dream about opportunities to serve and have the desire to lead them and help execute them. Execute opportunities, not people. Thought I should make that clear. Somebody comes up with a sword, I'm ready to execute. But we don't want to just have systems and programs. Those might be effective in feeding people, meeting practical needs, or even trying to keep people out of trouble, but we want to go deeper than that. We want people in our community and the families they represent to desire to be changed from the inside out by the power and the presence of God in their lives, no matter how we get them in the door. Sarah and I used to be youth pastors at our sister church in Elmira, and some of y'all know this, but many of the young people that would come started coming for reasons other than Jesus, and I think that's the typical youth group, youth ministry. Some of them started coming because we'd feed them dinner at the beginning of every youth night, something that we replicate here. Food's important. Food's a great gathering thing. For some of them, that was the primary source of food, so we were meeting a need in their life. Other young people would come just because their parents wanted them out of the house and wanted us to babysit them. I was fine with that. Some were just coming to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Again, whatever gets you in the door to the church. We were happy to feed these kids and to keep them safe, but we desired that it would be more than just a social program and a hangout club. We desired to move them toward the heart of God. We started out with a group of 20 kids, which is a sizable group out in Elmira. There was somebody influential in the church that wanted us to keep it more like a social club than anything else. They thought we could attract more youth if all we did was play games and eat food and those kinds of things and hang out. And those were part of our ministry strategy there. Those are tools in the belt that we could use. But Sarah and I desired to take them deeper. We wanted to build relationship with them and to show them how much we cared. Then they were open to learning more about Jesus. Now, if you and I sat down, I could talk about that season of life and ministry for a long time. I love being a youth pastor, and in many ways, I still am. I just pretend that you guys are all youth, and then it's all good. You guys are so young. I love it. Over 3 years there, we grew to a point where we were averaging 65 young people on a Wednesday night. All the glory of God. Man, the church was averaging like 125 on Sunday morning. We had like 65 kids on Wednesday nights out there. Crazy stuff. It wasn't by our doing, and we used some of the tools in our belt, but we didn't shy away from meeting their need, but then sharing the gospel with them. And we were giving them things that they didn't even know that they needed, which was the love and the truth of Jesus. Food and a safe place to hang out and have fun was important, and that's how many of them showed up for the first time, but that's not why they stayed. The power of the gospel worked in their lives, and that is more attractive than anything else that we can offer. That's what our world needs. We're going to do some things as a church to help meet the practical needs of families in our church and in our community. But more importantly, we desire to bring those people closer to the heart of Jesus so that their lives can be changed in a way that cannot be achieved anywhere else. Our world is changing, and it's drifting farther and farther away from God in many aspects, but it's really just primed and ready for a fresh move of God. People use the word revival, and I get scared using it because everybody has their own connotation of it, but a fresh move of God. I think we're ready for that, and I would love to see that here in our communities, not just where our church resides, but in the communities that each and every one of you guys reside in. But unless we're reaching lost people and raising up disciples, men, women, youth, young children, everybody, until we're reaching them, they're not going to receive the hope that is only found in Jesus. I don't want to be overly dramatic here, and I can be at times, but the truth is that so many people walk in darkness, and their lives are a constant struggle trying to find peace, trying to find happiness or fulfillment, and their lives are basically a struggle from like beginning to end, and frankly, that struggle oftentimes ends lives prematurely. And our mission to, as a church, to encourage and lead families and the community to pursue an authentic relationship with Jesus is not just a tagline. It's not something we thought was clever and so that we would rip it off from our sister church. It's not just a tagline, but it's literally a lifeline to a community that needs more Jesus. We want to facilitate a movement in our community that strengthens the faith, that deepens the love of those that don't know Jesus. But we also want to be the point at which those who don't know Jesus find new life in him. Most of you know, if you've been here any amount of time, that's why the name of our church is LifePoint Community Church. We introduce people to Jesus, and Jesus is the point where new life begins. If you haven't memorized John 14:6, which is our anchor verse for this church, I would highly encourage you to do so. It goes hand in hand with our mission statement. John 14:6 says this, Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. We need to show people that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. We must advocate for them, for their families, for their relationships with God, so that they can also become servants in the community and leaders in the kingdom, so that our churches are overflowing with people that are desperate to encounter the saving grace of Jesus and have new life in him. There was a prophecy from a trusted voice that was spoken over this church a few years ago. Some of you know it, and those that haven't heard it, you need to hear it. The prophecy was this, that there will literally be people looking through the doors and windows of this church to see what is going on. It wasn't just somebody randomly said that, and we hope it's the case. This is a trusted voice, somebody that I know, have a long history with, that hears from the Lord, that gives prophetic words, that gave this word to me over this church. Our mission is how that happens. It doesn't just happen when somebody walks by and, oh, what's going on in that building? I'm going to look through the windows and I'll be like, oh yeah, look, the prophecy fulfilled. Somebody randomly peeked through our windows. They were being a peeping Tom, but I guess that counts. Like I don't care how they see what's going on here. If they're just snooping and they end up finding Jesus, that's awesome. But our mission is how that happens. Our actions in the community will draw people closer to Jesus. And our prayer is that they will be able to stand up and say at some point, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's what we are pursuing as a church. That our families and our communities will make that statement. Will you join me in that mission? I don't want to be walking this alone. And I know that I'm not. Some of y'all are still just very studious and processing. Not very emotional. I see maybe I'm just the one that's very emo. I don't know. Each and every one of you plays a big role in the mission, whether you know it or not, and whether you want to or not. Again, our mission statement tells us what we're going to do. And next week, as we introduce to you the first of 7 core values, we will be talking about how we are going to go about our mission.